Welcome to the Rider Rumblings podcast. This is episode 172. I am Taylor Shire. He is Darrell Davis, and we are back after the Saskatchewan Roughriders just dismantled the Montreal Alouettes on the weekend. I was trying to think of a good word. Dominated, dismantled. You could have your pick of the words you could use, Darrell, but 34-6 victory over the Alouettes, who are considered one of the CFL's best teams coming in, but with a lot of missing pieces, the Riders handled them quite easily.
Did they ever? We were talking before we started recording, Taylor. How many different words can we think of for dominated, right? And it was on all sides of the football: offense, defense, special teams. You know, if you really want to get nitpicky, what could we say? Well, Brett Lothar on a field goal attempt hit an upright, and some defensive backs dropped potential interceptions. All of those would have made it even more of a rout, which is really surprising. They have trouble winning in Montreal. They hadn't won there since 2021. I didn't think it was going to be so much of a blowout. I thought it was going to be close, and I even would have predicted the Alouettes, even though they were in shambles. But it really started showing. They lost a couple decent players during the game and just could not keep up to the Roughriders at all.
Yeah, Saskatchewan really controlled right from the get-go. I mean, they scored on their first drive or put points up, and then they just sort of continued that all the way to the fourth quarter, and they closed it out. There was never a point where it was in doubt. The last couple of weeks, Saskatchewan sort of had a tough time holding on to leads. They would let BC and then Edmonton last week kind of back into the game a little bit. The Riders actually scored points in the fourth quarter for the first time in 3 games, didn't give up any. So it was sort of this, all of the frustration or whatever you want to call it, they were still winning. They still have been winning, but all these sort of little things that they've been working on, finish strong, start fast, obviously, all of those things sort of came together. And I think they have to be quite happy with that going into the bye week.
Yeah, they ran the football too, right? AJ Ouellette had a good game. They used Mario Anderson, the new running back who looked good, looked shifty. The offensive line is kind of rebuilt. It's kind of going back to kind of its original state because players are coming back from the injury list. Looked really good, only 1 sack. Diverse offense, threw it deep, threw it shallow. Trevor Harris completed enough passes. Unbelievable on offense what they did, and defense. That defense, since they started adding that extra rusher a lot, we've been talking quite a bit about that 4-man front and how dominant it could be, but it hadn't been. And now they're starting to use that 5-man rush and even adding a 6th rusher sometimes, really dominating. It's setting up so many things for that defense. The secondary likes to be ball hawks. They better catch a few more balls. Other than that, amazingly, as you said, everything they were working on, they accomplished that game. And if we're going to sit here and pick on things, it would be really difficult to say there's a flaw in that football team right now, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think one of the things that good football teams always have depth, right? And the Riders are without Sam Emilus, Kean Schaefer-Baker, Shawn Bane still sidelined. I want to touch on Shawn Bane in a minute, but 3, starting receivers in this league are sidelined. And then obviously Keyshawn Johnson, we know what he can do coming in after a good season last year. He's as been expected. Dante Myers, he was sort of that bubble player going into the season. Would he earn a starting spot? We thought he would, but then would he be pushed out if Bane is back? Bane's obviously not back yet. Again, I do want to touch on him because I spoke to him last week. But Dante Myers, to me, is this sort of breakout performer of the year for this team. He had, 136 yards, 5 catches on Saturday, and he is turning into that deep ball threat that they haven't always had in the lineup. So I think Dante Myers deserves some credit for how he's played over the last few weeks, and he's becoming that one of the key targets for Harris, especially with those other guys out of the lineup.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I was wondering about Dante Myers during training camp too, but watching him in Montreal, that one throw that he's running down the left sidelines, turns around over his left shoulder basically, and sees the ball coming and turns so far that he kind of catches the ball with his left shoulder. It's like he's running forward and his face and his body's facing the other direction, and he made that catch. Amazing catch radius. It's just what they talk about for good receivers. Doesn't seem to drop balls. He's tough. He's brave. He's not a big guy. So when you talk about a receiving core, it's turning into a very good receiving core, surprisingly so with all those injuries that you talked about. And is there room for Shawn Bane? Because I know he's a fan favorite and he had a really good first season, but he's been hurt and not so productive since then. And you spoke to him, and where's that going?
Yeah. So he's healthy. He's been cleared. Corey Mace said it's about building up his confidence. When I asked what's it going to take for Shawn Bane to get back in the lineup, Shawn Bane said he's as confident as ever. He's ready to go. So to me, it's about who are you going to take out and put him in. If you're winning, why mess with a strategy? You don't take out Keyshawn Johnson. You don't take out Myers. Joe Robustelli, I guess that would be the guy that you'd have to bump out of the lineup because they're not going to go at this, the way the ratio is going, they're not going to play an extra American receiver and take
and Bane's an American, don't
so that's why Tommy Neal came in for MLS. Bane might have more sort of a larger skill set than Tommy Neal, but based on the ratio, they need to do that. The only way I can see this happening is that if Daniel Johnson comes back at left tackle and Peyton Collins goes back to the practice roster, then that's a flip in the ratio. So then they could put Bane in for Tommy Neal if Sam Emlis remains out. Yeah, that would be the only way that I could see Shawn Bane, unless you just say to Joe Robustelli, hey, you've played great for us, but we're going to give Bane a shot.
It would be totally unfair to bump Robustelli the way he's played. And Peyton Collins last night.
How do you take him out?
After the game, the job he did on Montreal's defensive ends was really impressive. You can see why he became the starter out of training camp. I can't see them making that import non-import ratio change. You're right. Shawn Bane might be good. Maybe they're going to have to trade him. It's good to have that depth, but if you get something for him, maybe that might be the deal, right? And there aren't many trades in the Canadian Football League during the season, but I don't see him fitting in at the moment. And they have some. He's waiting in the wings, but he's good enough to be a starter. I can't see any other route for that one. So you're right. Missing the Canadians, they've been able to fill in. Missing that offensive line, they got 6 linemen. Well, I guess it's now down to 5 on the injury list. So that's caused a lot of ratio shuffling too. It's amazing what they've pieced together on offense, and they're just, as you said, there's no room for Shawn Bane. He's just those other guys are playing too well ahead of him.
Yeah, I don't think there's room right now. Obviously, during the bye week, he's not going to play this week, and I don't think he'll play going into the Hamilton game next week. But I think not trading him and having him on the lineup, he's very well liked in the locker room. Even Corey Mace, we can tell he brings that energy. He's a high energy guy. Even if he's not in the lineup, he's still bringing that high energy at practice each and every day in the locker room. You can tell. So I don't think he's a trade type of guy. I don't think you trade somebody that popular because he's not going to be a guy who's going to complain about his playing time. He might, hope for a little bit more and want, but I don't see him as the type of guy who's going to put himself above the team and say, and pout, right, if he's not playing like we have seen some players do. So obviously he wants to get back in the lineup. He probably should be back in the lineup, but just based on the situation, he might not be. Injuries happen. I mean, we're only in week 9, just through week 9 right now. So it's a long season. So if you think about all of those 3 American receivers, if they can stay healthy for the rest of the season, great. If they have to miss a game here or there, if they need a week of rest, right, that's a perfect guy to bring up and put right back in. You don't even have to worry about
true enough. He can play. That's for sure. And you mentioned they're heading into bye week. That's why as we're recording this, they have a week off. They scattered across North America. Some of them will come to Regina and just do their work, as the coaches will probably be doing. This is a huge part of the schedule. We had talked about Montreal being a difficult game. Wasn't so difficult, surprisingly so. They have the Hamilton Tiger Cats coming to town on the 16th of August, and then they go to Calgary, with the only team that's beaten them so far, and then they have home and home against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So those are teams that the Rough Riders have to be able to beat somewhere along the line. So this is a huge stretch of their schedule, isn't it?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, McLeod Bethel Thompson starting for Montreal doesn't make Montreal as tough of a matchup. Vernon Adams hasn't played for Calgary hasn't played for Calgary. That makes them a bit of an easy matchup. This Hamilton game, I think, will be sort of the Grey Cup preview. And then if Zach Collaros is back for Winnipeg, the Labor Day Banjo Bowl rematch makes it whole, that's an enticing back-to-back. So, yes, if the quarterbacks on the other teams are healthy, then, yes, this is going to be a tough stretch for this team and a real measuring stick stretch like we've seen this team go through. And on the flip side, if these quarterbacks are not healthy, this team could easily be 12-1, whatever, maybe 11-2 after this stretch. So we'll see. But I guess as Corey Mage says, 1 week at a time. So we'll look ahead a little bit to the Hamilton game. That, to me, is going to be this sort of, I don't want to call it a Grey Cup preview yet, because I don't know if Hamilton is quite there in terms of how their defense can play against a healthy Davis Alexander and the Alouettes when he returns. But Bo Levi Mitchell against Trevor Harris, who had another great game, I think is exactly the matchup that we're all sort of wanting at this point in the season.
Yeah, Hamilton's on a heater as we start going, right? 6 in a row. Bo Levi Mitchell looked really good. I know the tough game that we just watched against the Edmonton Elks that they pulled out. Edmonton just can't.
Edmonton should have won that game if it wasn't for a drop. So
drop and an interception at the wrong time. You're right. They just can't seem to pull it out, and that's going to be a problem with a team like Edmonton. So, but Hamilton, it's on the road, so it's never easy. And I know the Roughriders. It was close when they went to Hamilton and beat the Tiger Cats, but I am looking forward to this one. You're right. There are games during the season that you think, oh boy, want to watch this one, right? And this is one of those games that you circle on the calendar because it's a real indicator for both teams. I think Hamilton wants to see how its roster stacks up against the best team in the league, the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah, and the East versus the West, sort of first place teams at that point. I know we're still a week away from that, and we can discuss lots of that next week on the podcast before that game. But that to me is going to be sort of the biggest measuring stick game of the season for this team. I know they're going to want another chance at Calgary, especially if Vernon Adams is back in the lineup, and that I guess the week after will be another measuring stick game. But yeah, this stretch is going to test this team, but I think, to me, they're up to the task. We've seen them go through struggles at this point in the season, last year especially, right, when they went winless in how many games. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think they're well tested, and they went through that, which I think then helps them not have to go through that this time around.
Yeah, I think you're right. They learned from last year what it takes to get out of a skid like that, right? Although last year they were missing Trevor Harris too, their starter.
Yeah.
They survived that this year, right? Because they brought in Jake Mayer, who's a proven CFL quarterback, maybe not a bona fide starter, but is certainly worthy of playing in the Canadian Football League. And they put him in, and he did what he was supposed to do. He won the football game without giving it away for the Roughriders. So that just allowed them to keep marching along their merry way. And that's what they've been able to do all season with all these spots, right? The one that really comes to mind for me is they're missing Avery, the linebacker, and in steps Allen, right? CJ Avery's out, and AJ Allen steps in and is playing great, and he's a Canadian. So they've been able to do that, and that's why they're still plodding along and on top of the table, as they say in UK. Yeah,
the lineup heading into the season or heading into the training camp even looks quite a bit different than what I sort of expected. When you look at maybe one of the linebacker positions, especially on the offensive line, receiver, as we touched on. But I think that's a sign of good, props to Jeremy O'Day and company for finding good talent and having that next man up mentality, right? It's so cliche, but it's so true that if you're second, third on the depth chart, there's a good chance you're going to play at some point in the season. You very well could be a starter down the stretch, we are seeing this team have to, bring up that second, third string player to start for a long period of time too.
Yeah, kudos to Jeremy O'Day, the general manager, and his staff, right? On the phone-in shows, the critics aren't talking about Jeremy O'Day anymore, right? It's funny how that works, but he's done a tremendous job, or he and his staff, right? Putting people in the right place. And you said getting down to the second, third string players sometimes has really been pretty impressive that these guys have been able to step in. So they know what they're looking for. They knew where they needed the extra depth, and they've put it all together. So yeah, it's a strong team. I know the one guy who's starting to take some heat is safety Nelson Lacombo, right? He dropped a couple of interceptions against the Alouettes and had one go over his head, a touchdown against the Edmonton Elks. So people are starting to wonder, why is he, he's not a hard hitter. He's a good cover guy because he played cornerback. Why is he still in there? And we just keep saying he must be grading well, because if he wasn't grading well and playing back there, doing what they want him to do, they would move him out. And I know he seems to be a guy who's a target for a lot of the critics, but to me, he's not going to be everybody wants Jackson Ford to play at safety, right? Because he's a hard hitter and you want guys scared across the middle. But I think Lacombo seems to, for the most part, picks guys up. But when a safety makes a mistake, it usually shows up. And I think that's probably the issue as much as anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. a lot of times you don't see what happens when he doesn't get targeted, right? So is he in good coverage? Is he providing that good coverage when you don't even talk about it? You don't see it unless you look at the all 24 and you say, oh, Lukambo was in great position to take away that deep throw or that whatever you want it, because they're going to play in that zone. So, yeah, and then he gets sort of beat on a couple of throws, and all of a sudden we're saying, oh, he should be replaced. Yes, he should have had probably 2 interceptions for sure. One. Roland Milligan probably could have had one, the second one too. So, I don't think you mess with a defense that's playing this well. Sure, you could replace him and maybe find a bit of a spark with Jackson Ford, who did have a strong preseason before hurting I believe he hurt his hand or something. His wrist.
Yeah.
So I don't think you replace Nelson Lukambo at this point in the season, but there is competition, right? And that's what everybody wants. You want competition. Yeah. So
remember, this defense had given up the most passing yardage per game too, right? So that's the way it's kind of set up. They want people to throw because they want to create turnovers, but they better grab the turnovers, I guess. But we'll see how it goes along. You're right. They seem to be in the right places. They seem to be doing the right things, and we don't notice Nelson Lukambo when he's covering the guy because the quarterback won't throw to his receiver if Lukambo's in the vicinity. So for the most part, he seems to be doing the job. And if he wasn't, I'm pretty sure that Corey Mason, Joshua Bell, the guys who handle those parts of the defense, would have made a change.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about Trevor Harris. We haven't really touched on his game. Obviously, it was solid all around, good performance, and I know
he didn't run.
Yeah, he didn't run the ball. But 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and at some point in the game, in the fourth quarter especially, there was would Jake Mayer come in? Would Tommy Stevens come in to close it out? And then Harris kind of stayed in there late. But then I went back and looked at the stats, and his last 2 passes were 2 short completions to get him over that 70% mark. So I don't. It would have to be a question for him, but he stayed in the game late enough to boost his passing percentage over 70% with 2 late short completions. He's kept his record of now 11 games with a 70% completion rate. So I don't know if that would be a good question to ask. They're on a bye week. Can't really ask Trevor this week.
Be honest about
that. I might ask him, if I remember, I might ask him after the bye week, hey, did you want to stay in there? Because we've seen that before where you get hey, here's a short pass to keep your receptions.
They used to do that with Don Narcisse a lot. Yeah, sometimes just to keep the streak alive, right? So I'd hate to accuse Trevor Harris of doing that. But I was wondering the same thing. Why is Trevor Harris still in this blowout in the fourth quarter, right? Yeah. Jake Mayer could use some playing time. I know they did put Tommy Stevens in at the end because they like to run out the clock with him, and it worked this time. But you're right. I was wondering. You have to start wondering why did Trevor Harris stay in that game? So go ahead. You can ask.
That's my theory. Yeah,
good relationship. So go ahead.
That's my theory. That's why he was in the game. And Jake Mayer didn't actually play. Tommy Stevens came in late to finish it out. But I think Mario Anderson deserves a bit of a shout out as well. He came in the fourth quarter, and obviously you want to give AJ Ouellette a bit of a break at that point in the game. And against a tired defense, he looked unreal. He was cutting, and he made 3 different cuts on that one run. And I don't know what his final stat line said, and obviously you have to take that with a grain of salt because it was late in the game. But that was an impressive performance late by Mario Anderson to help close it out and help keep the time running on this game that we all wanted to end.
With another lightning delay too, right?
Yeah,
we were 15, 20 minutes. So it did take a long time to play that game, and by that time it was over. But Anderson was kind of a bright light for them. You're right. Basically, his first solid CFL action since they brought him back to replace Kadeem Carney, right?
Terry.
Sorry.
Kadeem Carey, yeah.
Kadeem Carey, probably won't be back for the season. So Anderson came in and ran little. He's a lot shiftier. Although Let's running making some shifts too, pretty well, right? He talks about losing the weight so he could make those cuts, and Ouellette ran exceptionally hard. But Anderson was kind of a bright spot at the end. You're right. They wore down that Montreal defense. Yeah. That's always Noel Thorpe, the defensive coordinator, has one of the best defenses in the league every year, and the Roughriders knew what they were doing. Only had 5 defensive linemen dressed, the Alouettes did, and they just wore them down. One just came back from injury, and Sean Lemon was playing his first game after a 1.5 year suspensions for gambling and illegal substances in his bloodstream. So for them to take advantage of that was part of the strategy, and they did a good job. And I'd like to see Anderson and Ouellette back in the backfield together, because as good as Ouellette is and powerful and breaking those guys down, you got to get tired getting hit that often. So to have a little bit of change of pace in Anderson is a really good thing to have.
I would agree with that. And with that, let's wrap up the 172nd episode of the Rider Rumblings podcast. Enjoy the bye week, Darrell. We will be back next week for episode 173 as we talk about that Grey Cup preview. I'll bill it now. Between the Riders and the Ticats.
You said you were going to be careful about that.
I know. The Riders and the Ticats will play August 16th. Until then, the Green and White are on a bye week. Darrell, thanks as always for joining the podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.
You bet, Taylor. See you soon.